What is up, everybody? Welcome to this GameXplain review discussion for Final Fantasy XVI. I've got Adam here who's played a whole big old chunk of this game. How many hours, Adam?
I'm about 25 hours in, roughly maybe 60-70%, I'd say, through the whole story.
Great. And I would say that this is maybe one of the most anticipated games of the year. Feel like I have not stopped hearing about this game for months and months and months. Of course, I just played that banger demo that if you haven't checked it out, do it right now. I love that demo. Adam, the game, Final Fantasy XVI, does it live up to the hype?
It's a very good step for the series. It is a... I've got to be quite critical of the game today, but that's only because this is a mainline Final Fantasy game. And after Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1, you know, I just have completely different expectations of the series now. And it does a lot very well, and then does other things worse than I would have hoped.
Okay. Let's jump in really quick. I'm most curious about this kind of pivot to more almost stylish action combat. I feel like I've seen the marketing where they're like, it's the DMC5 combat director, all that stuff. How does that stuff come together in this game?
So it's definitely less Devil May Cry than I was expecting. Obviously, with Devil May Cry, you have, you know, heavy, light combos. You know, you also have sort of pause combos where you do like a light, pause, heavy, stuff like that. Whereas in this game, it's more you have a string of light attacks that you can string with your magic ability on R2. Well, I played on control type B, so whatever I say is actually might be different. But so what you do is like say light attack, light attack, light attack, and then at the end of it, you can string together a magic combo. And then that's sort of like all the basic combos out of the way. Outside of that, that's when it kind of gets a bit more action RPG-ish, where it's more you have abilities. So not only do you have, say, that combo that I just said, you also have different icon abilities, and they're like ice, fire, and all these, you know, elements. The first one you get is fire, as you can see, as you saw in the demo. And each one, I think, has maybe 5 or 6 different abilities, and you can equip 2 at any time. So it's more you are stringing together your light combos and then using them abilities to kind of have what a Devil May Cry combo is. So you would do like light, magic, and then use an ability that would say like launch the enemies up into the air, and then you can string together an aerial combo. And then if you hold R1 and L2 or square and triangle, your heavy and sort of magic attack, then you could do like a slam down to the ground. And that's where it doesn't feel like Devil May Cry. It feels more like an action RPG where it's more like you have abilities that almost act as combos, but it's not quite there. It's almost like a hybrid system.
So would you say, just trying to get a feel for it, playing as much as you have, is it special or unique, or does it stand out in a way where you feel now like, oh man, they've really got something here, or does it kind of more feel like something you've played before and are familiar with?
It's definitely something I'm familiar with. It feels like a lot of other action RPGs, like if you've played Tales of Arise or even some of the Ys games. That's from I've very limited experience with the Ys series, but that's what it feels like, where you more have abilities to use. But I think where it stands out is that this game is super high budget. It's all the particle effects and the fires flying off, and you know, Clive is jumping up into the air, and then you're calling in Torgal to attack them, and it's just it's very flashy. But this is where my big issue with it is that the combat is very flashy, but there's not much substance to it. And I do think I will be kind of an outlier on this game, but I felt myself just constantly spamming abilities. It didn't feel like there was much finesse to it. So basically, the normal enemies are you know, they're pretty easy to kill. Well, to be honest, this game's too easy. That's another big complaint. It's like way too easy. I didn't die once, like not even close to dying once. And so yeah, I was more disappointed with the depth because I just kept doing all the same stuff. So you have normal enemies, normal health bars, they're easy to kill. And then you get these enemies that have like a stagger bar underneath that you have to whittle down. And then when they whittle down, then they're stunned for, say, 15 seconds or 10 seconds. Then you can deal loads of damage to them. But all of the big enemies are very easy to dodge. They're very easy to perfect dodge all their attacks. And then once you kind of dodge their attacks, you just unleash the exact same combo every single time.
Of course.
I did light, magic, and then I did both of my fire abilities, and then swapped to a different icon, and then did both of the other icon abilities, and then swapped to the other one, and then just spammed the abilities. So it didn't feel like there was much finesse there, where I was kind of hoping that I would have a sort of play style where it's like, oh, I want to be an aerial Clive. Like, I want to launch the enemies up into the air. I want to equip all my gear so that I do extra aerial damage, and then I knock them down to the ground. And then my sword is imbued with fire, which you can't do for one attack. But it just felt it didn't really reward that, and then the gear system didn't synergize with it whatsoever. Like, you have, say, trinkets you can equip that increase your aerial damage by 8% or something. But I could have went through this game not changing any equipment, and I don't think it would have affected how I played. So it's really fun. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm bored. I'm certainly not bored because of the spectacle of it. But if they were really trying to hammer in on that, we are really going for this action combat. You need something deep there for not only deep mechanically, but deep behind the scenes with your gear and your builds. But there's none of that. It's more, this is a flashy action game, and it's not a flashy action RPG.
Ooh, okay. You're kind of breaking my heart a little bit, because I had this experience with the demo, and this is what I wanted to ask you, where I felt like I got to a point where I understood who I was fighting, and I would dodge their attacks, / and I would just keep doing that forever. Yeah. And I'd be like, bro, I know I can do this for another 10 minutes, but why do I? And that you felt that persisted throughout the game.
Yeah. It's the enemies the normal enemies roughly stayed the same with their, like, health pool. But as you get into the ones that have the stagger bars, it's almost like their health was just ever so slightly increased as you go along. So some of the boss fights, again, I really have to reiterate this. I really like this game. But it's more like this combat system is a good but not a great combat system.
Yeah, it's serviceable.
Yeah, okay. It does the job, and I kind of have to remind myself that in JRPGs in general, the normal battles are always pretty boring. Like, you're just going through, you're spamming out commands, and then and then you get all the cool stuff. But so I do kind of have to remove myself and think, okay, well, this is what that is, where fighting the normal enemies is boring. Some of the boss fights are good, but they're certainly not difficult. And it's more just a disappointment that obviously I tempered my expectations going into this, But this was one of my most highly anticipated games of the year. And after Final Fantasy VII Remake's combat system, let me step back. Final Fantasy XVI has the best combat system in a Final Fantasy game since Final Fantasy XII. Final Fantasy XV's combat was awful. I didn't really play much of 14, but that's an MMO. 13's combat system was good, but I still think 16 is better. But then 12's I really liked because of the Gambit system. But here, it's a good step, but it needs more depth behind it. It needs more meat other than... Because, like, my finger, no joke, my finger is actually sore. Because I was spamming R1, and then holding down R2 at the same time, and then pressing R1 and pressing square. And it's just,
Okay, so you kind of feel like in more often than not, in most engagements, you had this is how I win fights. And that's just what it boiled down to. You dodge the enemy attacks, and you do these attacks in this order. That is the most efficient method for you to win, and that's it.
Yeah, and...
Okay.
I had a point there, but I forget what I was going to say.
That's okay. Yeah, that's okay. So, in terms of variations, party members, is there anything in the mix here that gives you a little control, a little customization, I'm going to go a little bit maybe more in this direction, or not really?
No. So the party is, you have a party, but you don't have any control over the party members. You have control over Torgal, and Torgal has an attack, like a normal attack that you have to press up on the D-pad, or he has a down attack that launches them up into the air.
Okay.
And when I saw that, that's when I kind of got excited. Oh, maybe you can start doing aerial combos. You can't do aerial combos, but it felt... you said there, like, maybe I had kind of a one combo fits all and does everything, and that's how I win every encounter. It's almost like every combo, regardless of what I did, would win the encounter. And there was no... Because when it comes to Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm going to keep going back to that, is that that had the whole stagger system where you could stagger people with different elements and stuff. And I think that's what this is missing, because firstly, the enemy pool is actually quite small from what I've played. You're fighting a lot of the same enemies, and even when you're fighting different enemies, you're fighting like the knights in white armor. Now you're fighting the knights in black armor. And now you're fighting the knights that have a mage behind them that heals them. And even the bigger bosses or the bigger enemies with the stagger bars are like, you're fighting this big guy with an axe, and now you're fighting this big guy with a hammer, and now you're fighting this big guy that has like a mortar, like a big thing to knock down a door, basically. And I would have liked to see, say, for these enemies, it's best to use this combo. For this enemy, he is good on the ground, so you're better off knocking him into the air. Or for this guy, use fire to lower his shield and then attack him with this. But it's basically, you can do whatever you want, and regardless, it's going to work.
Man, that's such a bummer, because I feel where you're coming from, because even in the demo, when that stagger bar depleted, I never really knew when it was happening. It's just after attacking them every so often, I would just be like, oh, all right, now I get some free attacks.
Yeah.
All right, let's keep going, I guess. Yeah, okay. So it sounds like the thing, though, that is tying the game together, because you said you still like it, is that there seems to be a sense of scale and maybe cinematic explosiveness. Just a sense of man, this is you're feeling the dollar bills a little bit. Is that carrying so much of the game?
Yeah, definitely. This is, as I said, similar enough for me from what I've played of Ys, which are very they're nowhere near as high budget as this game.
Sure,
but it's more, it was nice on the eyes, and at the very least, if your combat system, it felt good. It felt good because of the feedback and all the particle effects and the sounds.
Yeah.
But it's really high budget, but just missing that bit of something that just wanted me to kind of dig my teeth in and learn a combat system.
All right, let's do a little transition now, and let's kind of go, we talked about the gameplay a little bit, let's talk about the story a little bit. Obviously, you're not going to spoil anything. Nope. That's not what we're here for. I kind of just want to know, in broad strokes, how engaged with it were you? How interesting were the characters? And then I think a good maybe point of comparison is something like Forspoken, which you and I talked about earlier in the year, with the infiltration of some modern language and maybe some Hollywood writing tropes kind of made their way into that game. Is it a similar situation here? What are your big takeaways from the way the story is kind of drawn?
Well, the story is, and I'm sure a lot of people got this from the demo, the story is Game of Thrones. It takes heavy inspiration from Game of Thrones. There's kind of two stories going on at once. There's Clive's journey, and then in the background there's the warring kingdoms and all the leaders of the kingdoms. Kind of lots of politics involved. But it's really nice because Final Fantasy XV, a game I just beat recently for the first time. I played it ages ago, but the game just isn't good. It wasn't good back then. It isn't good now. But the problem that Final Fantasy XV had was that the main four characters were really good. Well, they were good, and I was there for their journey. But it's like they just forgot about the world because, there was, a backdrop anime, you had to watch this movie, you had to play this side game. But here, it so far feels very fleshed out because not only are both of these stories going on, you will have a cutscene with Clive and some of the characters, and they'll be all talking about what's going on. And then it'll the screen will go back, and then it'll go, meanwhile. And then it will pan to some other kingdom. and they're, the leader and all of his court and all that, and they're sitting around, they're discussing politics, or discussing strategy, what should we do? And then you're getting little nuggets about how the different kingdoms treat different people, because a lot of this plot is about dominants, who are these people that can wield the power of the icons, who are basically Ifrit and Bahamut and, all the summons from Final Fantasy. And it's cool seeing how the different kingdoms... I don't want to spoil anything, I'm keeping this very broad, but it's cool seeing how the different kingdoms treat the different dominants, because each kingdom has their own dominant, and different kingdoms, one's more religious, so they treat them this way, or this one's very militant, so they treat them this way. And I'm not saying it's like... It certainly isn't groundbreaking, but it's interesting, and so far they've done a good job of building, like, fleshing out the world behind all of this, like, story that's going on. And then throughout the story, you have this basically librarian that you can go to at any point, and you can sit down with them, and if you are confused, or you want to learn the history of a certain nation, or the history of a certain battle, you just talk to them, and they'll explain it to you. And then also...
Right.
And this
right. Doesn't he have a funny name? Isn't his name, like, Lorio or something?
I can't remember. I didn't really go to
Oh, okay.
But there's one... It's called the Active Time Lore.
Love this.
It's
so cool.
It's like this is something that I think every single big game like this should have going forward, especially one that has all of these nations. Where at any point during a cutscene, if you're like, "Oh, I haven't played this in a week," who's that character? You just press pause, press the touchpad, and then it brings up all the different things you can talk. It'll give you a backstory of this certain kingdom you're in. It will give you a backstory of a certain war they're talking about. It will give you a backstory of a certain character, and that's brilliant. And then...
so cool. Yeah.
Of course, obviously, we have to talk about Clive and the sort of characters. And
before you go into this, Adam, let me ask you something.
Yes, go on.
Because I understand the Game of Thrones comparison. Having played the demo, of course, I feel like even that kind of open area you're in, I was walking around there and I was like, dang, dude, it's like somebody like pulled up Game of Thrones and designed this area. Like they were looking right at it. Like it's crazy. But people like Game of Thrones.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So when a cutscene comes on, are you like excited to watch it?
Oh, yeah. This is big.
So it's working.
Oh, yeah. This is big. Oh, yeah. Sorry. If that came across as if like, oh, it's only Game of Thrones. Like, it's not, Game of Thrones is one of the biggest like franchises, TV shows, and books that have been around for the past 20 or 30 years. It's kind of like saying, oh, something's just Lord of the Rings,
Sure. Yeah.
But
so it's like working. You're like into it.
Yeah.
Does it have enough of like a cinematic push behind the camera? Is there, like, you and I last year we talked about God of War Ragnarok, which I think like as much as I was like underwhelmed on that game, I really enjoyed how like the perspective of the camera, and it felt like I was watching something that was like more than just game cutscenes. It felt like I was watching something that was designed a certain way. Does this get into that territory at all?
So there are kind of two different cutscenes. There's I'm not sure if they're in engine and they're just like really flashy, but there's the pre-rendered ones, which I believe are pre-rendered, that do have that very cinematic, very flashy feel about them, and they're usually the big battles and stuff. It's nothing like, it's similar to what we've seen in other Final Fantasy games like 10 and 12, where you see the battles and they're sort of pre-rendered and they are cool. And then the dialogue, some dialogue cutscenes are done like that, but the majority of the dialogue cutscenes are in-game. Now, they're not like in-game just static conversations with one another. They're in-game where there's a camera in a room, basically, and you're, witnessing them talking around a dinner table about blah, blah, blah. And they obviously lack... It's not like completely cohesive the way something like God of War is, where the camera is always the same. But no, it does a good job at kind of straddling this is a game, but it's also we're going for... This game has a lot of cutscenes, like a lot of cutscenes, and it's a lot more linear than I thought, than I would have expected, okay? It's like area to area. There are some open areas you can explore. There's quite a few, actually. But there's times in the story when it's like, okay, we're going to go to this area. We're going to have an intro cutscene. We're going to run through the area. We're going to have an outro cutscene. Might have a little conversation in between. And then we're going to go to the next area. And it's very like linear cinematic. So To be honest, I really appreciated it because, again, gonna take it back to other Final Fantasy games. Final Fantasy 15 was too big and too wide, and the cinematic moments were good, but there was too much fluff in between of just, on a long stretch of road. And the biggest complaint with Final Fantasy 13 was how linear it is, where I think Final Fantasy 16 perfectly straddles that line of, we have an area that you can run around and explore. There's a town, there's a few side quests, there's some items you can find, but again, the gear system is useless. But then we have these linear areas where we're going to funnel you through the story, and you might only have, say, 15 minutes of gameplay and, say, 10-15 minutes of cutscenes, but you're going to enjoy it.
Cool. All right. Well, hey, that seems like a good balance then. And then before I cut you off, you were trying to start talking about Clive, I think.
Yes.
You're going to tell me something about Clive. Yeah, okay, what's up?
Clive is cool.
Clive is cool!
Yeah, I like Clive. So, I don't know how people will feel about this, okay? But obviously, Cloud, he's everywhere. Everyone loves Cloud. And the thing about Cloud isn't actually a good character. He just looks cool. His design is cool. No one's sitting there. I don't think maybe I could be wrong, but I don't think anyone's sitting there saying whoa, Cloud is so deep, and Cloud is really good with his words. And I could be wrong, but I think people like Cloud because he has a spiky hair and he has the Buster Sword.
Okay, is Cloud deep? Let me know in the comments.
Yeah, I don't think
Cloud
he is.
is deep.
And Clive is slightly deeper than Cloud, but I actually think just as cool, if not more, because I love his design. If we're going back to just the design of Final Fantasy characters, obviously famous series for its character design. So at the start of the game, Clive is in just normal armor, but then eventually he gets the armor that he wears on the cover. And when you get that, it almost looks vampiric. I think Clive could fit into a Castlevania game pretty well.
Cool.
Where if you look at his cloak and you look at it's red, black, very, very triangular imagery. He looks vampiric or something. And
sick.
And then he also has the sort of the Final Fantasy pretty boy, all the Final Fantasy characters have to look good as well as cool. But outside of his design, he's a good character. I wouldn't say so far. I wouldn't go as far as to say he's amazing, but he's good. I like his voice acting. Some of the voice acting in the game though, very weird. Some characters go between accents. I can't pinpoint their accents. Sometimes they sound Irish. Other times the same character will sound almost Scandinavian. Sometimes they sound English, and I'm just oh. What's going on here? I was I can't pinpoint. At one point, I thought one character was Irish, and I was oh, that's cool. Because obviously, I like to see Irish characters, voice actors, and all that. But then I was wait, is she Swedish? I was no, she's not Swedish. Wait, is she English? It's no, I just can't pinpoint her accent. And then you asked me about the writing earlier.
Yeah.
So there's none of that Marvel writing. They're not trying to wedge crap in that doesn't belong. This feels like we are going to write a game that sounds medieval.
Okay.
Where there is... Not that it's, Shakespearean English and it's, doth and all this, but it's very... It's, they speak a certain way so that it fits the time period,
It's consistent.
Yeah, they're not
Okay.
Is it not oh, he's behind me, is he? The mob is behind me.
Sure,
no?
sure.
Yeah. So, I think the overarching plot is stronger than the characters so far. But it's yet to be seen. I'm not saying the characters are bad, but I think the plot behind them and what potentially could happen is the thing that's going to drive me forward. And then also that Clive is just cool. And Torgal is cool as well. Dogs are cool. So I think this is the thing. I think Clive and Jill is the sort of main female side character. I think they'll live or die by the ending. Where there was if anyone played the demo, I won't spoil exactly what happened, but there are a few emotional moments that hit me. Yeah. And throughout the story, there was one other moment that got me. I won't spoil it, But the prelude, there's like a motif to the prelude of Final Fantasy, the music playing in the background, and it just like got me. So I think I'll have to wait and see how it ends, because it's been a while since in the story I'm enjoying the adventure, but it's been a while since I've had a moment that really hit me, you know?
Yeah. Now let me ask you something, and if you just don't know the answer to this, that's fine. Do you get a sense that the story like has something to say, like it's about something, or is it just a lot of the greater movements of this thing's incoming to this thing, and these things are going to hit each other this way, and people are reacting and stuff? Or is there something underneath this to think about?
Yeah, I think there's an underlying, and like, again, I have to keep saying no spoilers, but there's like an underlying thing of treating people as equals.
Okay.
Because there's people in the world called branded. They're branded people, and they are almost they are the slaves of Final Fantasy XVI's world. And I think that's the underlying thing of Clive's journey, is wanting everybody to be treated as equal and not see these branded be slaves, basically. So that's what I think it's trying to tell so far. That's what I got from it anyway.
Okay, that's interesting, and that kind of leads into my next question. If you remember, maybe a couple of months ago, there was like a little bit of a controversy with this game in that like it just had like, I don't know how people got this information, but I guess there was just not a lot of diversity in terms of the like identities that you see in the game on the screen being represented at all. And I remember the director had like an awful answer about it, and I remember, oh god, yeah, I did not like that. But just having played through as much of the game as you have, I think my question, to be as simple as possible, is it as white as it seems?
Yes.
Okay, it's as white as it seems.
Yeah, it's
good
like
to know.
it's very like European medieval. That's what it is. Even all the branded like, and there's not even any. Now that I think about it, I'm not sure if there are any different sort of races in it either, as in like mythological races, if you get me. Like, do you know the way Final Fantasy?
There's not like little creatures.
Yeah, they're kind of like like it's all just humans running around. So it's very like European medieval.
Are there Moogles? Oh God. Okay. Okay. Forget I asked. I love Moogles.
There is.
Okay. Great. All right. I love Moogles. All right. Yeah. Honestly, my big takeaway with this game is that I want the next Kingdom Hearts to play like this. I think that'd be a good merging of.
Because to be honest, I should have actually drawn parallels to Kingdom Hearts, because Kingdom Hearts 3's combat system isn't the deepest, and it's also not the hardest, but it's still fun.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But I think I like. The problem is that I think Final Fantasy VII, I'm going to keep saying Final Fantasy VII Remake because that's the best in the series, is that game brought Final Fantasy up to a level that it hasn't been since I was a kid, basically. And now going into Final Fantasy XVI, I was hoping, if this game had the combat system that I wanted, this could have easily been like a near 10 out of 10 game.
Gotcha.
But because it's a bit, just a bit lackluster, then...
Yeah.
It's dropping it down a few marks for me.
Yeah, I hear you. I know there are definitely times I totally feel you on the kind of game this is, where I'm not being challenged enough, but it's taking me long enough to take down a big enemy that I'm like, isn't there something more I could do? Isn't there, you know what I mean? I understand that feeling. Kind of the last thing I really wanted to hit on was the performance. Maybe this doesn't matter that much because I read that there was a day one patch that's coming out. I don't think you had access to that. Can we talk about this at all?
Yes. So,
okay.
Before this all happened, Square Enix came out and said, we're not going to patch this game. It's perfect. It's perfect. Then I played the demo. Played it in frame rate mode, and I was like, oh, no, we can add this to the list of the games this year that haven't run at 60 FPS. And so far, it still doesn't run. So I think the bar for me this year was Jedi Survivor. When that game came out, that game ran like absolute crap. I haven't touched it in weeks because Tears of the Kingdom Diablo came out. Both games that actually ran pretty okay. But Jedi Survivor literally did not run at 60 FPS at any point, and I dropped it after 3 hours. Wasted €80 on it, by the way. And Final Fantasy XVI isn't as bad. It's certainly playable, but it rarely hits 60 FPS.
Is it enough that you feel it impacting your experience?
So this is the thing, okay? It doesn't. The frame rate seems to be the best during combat, which makes no sense because there's all these effects going off, and it never hindered the combat. But when I'm just walking around the world, it's not a stuttery frame rate. It's not like I'm walking at 60 FPS, now it's 45 for like a couple of seconds, and then it jumps back up to 60, and now it's down to 52. It's like just a constant level of this is not 60 FPS. Running around the world, and you're going into the towns. Now again, I'm no Digital Foundry. This is all just me going off my eyes.
Yeah,
okay?
sure, yeah.
But I know what a smooth 60 FPS feels like, and when you're running around some of the towns, I don't think it ever hit 60 FPS in a town. Sometimes out in the world it hit 60 FPS. During combat, it felt like it hit 60 FPS most of the time.
Yeah.
But during in the towns, no, not a hope.
All right. I've got another question after this, but to kind of move towards wrapping things up. What's your on the GameXplain scale? Where would you come down on it at this moment in time?
At this moment in time, it's a liked.
A liked.
And
okay.
If the story gives me a couple more moments that I'm hoping for, then it'll move up to a liked a lot. If it doesn't, I think it will stay the same.
Yeah. So, and then now help clarify for me a little bit. I feel like I very clearly can see what's holding the game back in a combat sense. But can you just help push me towards a little bit more what is the moment of transcendence in a game like this? Because it doesn't sound like you are in the middle of a combat scenario, you kill an enemy, and at the end you have that moment where you go, "Oh yeah, got him." It's like it's not that kind of game. So when is the moment in the game? What kind of moment is it that makes you? What is your emotional peak when playing the game?
I don't think there is one.
Oh, okay.
I think what
no,
it
that
is,
says a lot.
No,
yeah,
no,
okay.
I think so, and this is why I say I'm hoping for another couple of them moments because, well, let me say from a gameplay standpoint, I hate when games give you a character to control and then take you out of that character. So the icon battles is what I'd imagine a lot of people, I didn't touch on them, but the icon battles where you're, fighting as these big, like you're fighting as the summons against other summons.
Like the very beginning of the demo.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there more to it than what they did in that demo?
Yeah.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
So you get to these moments where you are an icon and you are fighting, okay?
Cool. Okay.
And for me, I hate when games do that. I always hate it. I hate when games put you in vehicles. I hate when games put you in mechs. I hate when games put you in a creature that isn't your character, especially a game that is designed so very clearly to be you are playing as this character alone, will flesh out this combat system, okay? So I think for some people, them icon battles, they do feel cool. But again, I'm like, okay, I'm over this. But they do feel cool. So I think gameplay moments, that's what people will probably, that will be their emotional peak where they'll be like, oh, this was so cool, and there were fire and lightning and blah, blah, blah. But for me, I personally don't care. And they're very few and far between, which is a plus for me, but for other people might not be.
It's almost like a big set piece moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And then
gotcha.
I think just talking about emotional peaks, it peaked in the demo and then kind of dipped and held constant, where it didn't drop so low that I was disinterested and I didn't have any investment in what was going on, but it never went so high that I was like, ooh, I can't wait to see what happens next.
Got it. Okay.
So it's again, I just have to wrap this up by saying this game is a very good game. It's a very good step in the direction for mainline Final Fantasy games. I think if the same team did Final Fantasy XVII, which I hope they do because this has been the best the series has been since Final Fantasy XII, well, apart from 7 Remake and 14, but like mainline games. So I think if they had another go of Final Fantasy XVII, then I'd be very, very happy with that.
Does anything goofy ever happen?
Yeah.
Really?
There's one character that's goofy, and I love him.
Fantastic.
It's like it's very serious, and then this character comes in and he gives a nice bit of comedy to it, and I really like the character.
Okay, that's great. All right. Well, that pretty much answers all of my questions. Is there anything else you feel like you need to? Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
So I touched on everything gameplay wise, from the combos to the gear system not being very good. But I honestly think that's just like the RPGification of a series that tends to happen. Like, I think Fallout got the same treatment with Fallout 4, and
All right.
I think Skyrim is the same. I really like Skyrim, but Skyrim was the same with the difference between Oblivion and Skyrim, less RPG-like. And I think that is just a symptom of, we want to sell this game to more people. Yeah. We want to make this, because I think I might have said this in the God of War review discussion, where I think at some point when you're making these mass appeal games, there are certain things that people like me, who are like hardcore RPG action fans, will start to miss. But then I'm also missing the point, you know? Where
got it. Yeah.
Where you at some point, they have to not dumb it down, but they have to make an RPG accessible to the masses if they want to propel this series forward. Because I think, that's it. I think it's just bound to happen with certain series if you want them to like thrive, basically.
I get that sense. Based on everything you said, it sounds like it's a big, high budget, like odyssey almost, that takes a lot of inspirations from things that like the general public really likes, and it sounds like the combat system won't get overwhelming in a way that it will scare people off. So I think it can bring people in, maybe teach them some stuff here. Who knows? Maybe there's an expansion down the line that really get some ideas going. I could see that for a game like this for sure. All right, great. Well, so I think, what's funny? I think my biggest takeaway from this whole thing is, weirdly, like, this seems like a game that's like worth the money. It's like earns the
it's
which
big,
is cool.
Yeah, it's big budget. You get loads of content. You get a good story, like a story that you will sit down. Like I found myself. I said earlier that I wasn't really I wasn't fully like, oh, what's gonna happen next, but I was still watching all the cutscenes. I was still invested.
Cool. As long as you're not skipping those cutscenes.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
However, this is something I do, Jake. Here's a question, okay? Do you know when you can skip through dialogue, but you have subtitles on? Do you know the way you can press X to like skip to the next sentence?
And you read it faster than they speak?
Do you read them and then skip, or do you listen to the whole conversation?
I think it depends. I think sometimes I do. It depends on like the voice actors, what kind of game I'm playing, because I like hearing the voices. Sometimes if I can turn them off and just listen, like I do that a lot. But also sometimes, I'm playing, I got my subtitles going in Spanish. I got them speaking in English, and I'm like, maybe I just want to read and move on to the next thing. So
yeah, because
I don't know. It depends on the game.
I always read and skip.
Read and skip.
Yeah, but like obviously for the cinematic cutscenes, you can't do that. But for like the conversations where you can skip to the next line, I always just read them and skip, read them and skip. So
yeah, love subtitles though. One day we'll get them in the movies. You know what
I
mean?
No. I have subtitles. I have subtitles on in every single game I ever play. Never have subtitles on movies ever.
Wow! Oh my God, that's crazy. Well, okay, that's a whole other podcast. But thank you everybody for hanging out with us to talk about Final Fantasy XVI. Good luck with the rest of your adventure, Adam, and let me know in the comments below if you had any lingering questions about the game. I'm curious, people, you're excited to pick it up, where your feelings are at, what you thought about everything we discussed here today. But that's going to do it for now. We'll see you next time.